Well, hi there, it's Paulie here, and as you can see, I'm here in Norway. Weather freezing, reindeer quite frequent. No, of course not. I'm in Agra, and yes, that is the Taj Mahal. Oh, there's the Royal Gate there behind me, which is a pretty damn thing. That is the mosque, north, south, east, and western mosque that flanks the Taj. Lord bless it. So, what better location to do a review for you of one of the pucker classics of miniatures gaming? I've been reading while here, rereading one of my childhood favourites, Donald Featherstone's Tank Battles in Miniature, particularly his wargaming the Western Desert Battles. This is a classic, and it is actually one of the things that introduced me to wargames. It's out in reprint. That reprint is from the Wargames History Project. Just look it up online and you will find it. Invaluable project that. But this is one of those wonderful projects where the author wanted to make a book that really invited you into the hobby that they loved. Donald was one of the foundation designers of our miniatures hobby. His work is absolutely invaluable. But it comes from a perspective of someone who honestly did serve in the Royal Tank Regiment in the Western Desert, World War II. He was a signaller in A echelon of 7 Battalion, I think. But yes, you know, he was in fact one of the sole survivors of his company after artillery attacks and all sorts of things. So the man has been shot at. So what he does in the book, first off, is he wants you to understand the feel of it. So you get a historical perspective first of what happened. Here's why they were fighting, here's where they were fighting, here's the terrain they were in, here's the constraints. But then he moves into slices of the action from personal experience, and he literally puts you in the turret and in the driver's seat as he lets you feel the problems these people have. So there's almost story sections of all this. With all of this done, he then starts moving on to the specific things we are going to need to make an actual war game of this. And it's a very interesting tone to it, because he's saying that literally, here but for the grace of God, anyone playing this might somehow be scooped up into some sort of war. So if more people were playing games like this and got these urges out of themselves, what a peaceful world it would be. And if you talk to veterans who've been shot at, you might find less people, you know, being warmongers. So he does have that very hard point that honest to God veterans from the pointy end will have. Many of these early books were very obsessed with scale. So he's designed these for 1/300th, or in this case 1/285th scale vehicles, which is a beautiful scale and I adore it. But of course he immediately begins to worry about the fact that we're going to have to use a larger ground scale than the vehicle scale, which in this day and age we are fine with. The models are only representative, but he's having to be very clear, because there was this obsession that if a 6-foot man is 52 millimeters high, then 52 millimeters has to be, you know, 6 feet on the table scale. So he breaks out of that. One of the things that's really interesting that he's brought out in those story sections and so on, and in discussing the problems, is the fact that the Western Desert is largely featureless. There are some very small rises which became quite important, these tiny elevations, but mostly, if you look at the photos, it tends to be flat, maybe with occasional outbreaks of like knee-high scrub, like little pockets, 6 or 7 feet wide, and that's about it. So it's tank country. It's vehicles only, because you know you can't walk this, but it's almost featureless. So it's almost like naval warfare. Units are actually being told to steer by compass bearing, and you can see enormous distances, but because of the dust and the haze, you can't get much of an impression of what you're looking at until you get far closer. First interesting thing, he sets up a system of blinds so that Your units are literally covered over by a little plastic bowl that you kind of spray painted up and put some cotton wool or whatever around to look like dust plumes from moving vehicles. So the area that it covers gives you some idea of how many vehicles there are under there and the size. He's got guidelines for this, but you can't really see what's under it until you get within a much closer distance. So on a big table you can get smoke plumes moving around. You know something's out there, but are they towed anti-tank guns? Are they tanks? Is it infantry in lorries? You won't know till you get a better look, or if you make an educated guess about how they're moving. If they're going over very soft ground or whatever, it's probably tracked vehicles. Or if it's moving like a bat out of hell, it's probably scout cars. So that's a very interesting idea. So his idea is that all units will be given orders for compass bearings to manoeuvre and steer by until they visually get targets, and then they can actually manoeuvre against those targets. Your communications are not always 100%, so you roll and see if there's if there's a slight delay. But that fog of war is a really interesting idea. He's then very, very good at getting tables and charts for accuracy of different guns at different ranges, resistance of different armour at different ranges, and so on. And these are all charted in the rules. He goes over each thing. So what he's doing is you have a system where your sides are rolling for initiative. You're moving small unit by small unit. Targets are fired upon. He's keeping the dice rolls on a D6 level. But when you hit, you roll for location if it's a armoured vehicle. And then you check to see if you penetrate the armour. There are some areas where you don't have to. If you hit something in the suspension or the tracks, you don't need to penetrate the armour. But the damage you do depends on where you've hit. There are separate little 1d6 charts for each location, be it tracks and suspension, turret, hull front, hull rear, hull side, these sorts of things. And those effects will be engine damage, shedding tracks, losing bogies, crew death. It can be, ammunition explosion, can be fires, and so on. So you're rolling for the severity of the damage. So, and it's actually interesting because the numbers of tanks, they sound like, in some of these offensives, the Germans have got like 400 tanks, the Allies might have 500 or 600. But when you think about it, you could almost play like entire regiment and brigade actions right down here, because some of these battles, you've only got like 19 vehicles on the German side, or 22 British vehicles for a regimental or brigade push. So you're actually playing quite a, one-on-one, one miniature represents one tank. You're getting quite a fair representation of some of the stoushes that they're having there. So you've got this whole individual damage system. Then he's put in lots and lots and lots of information charts for the vehicles. Some of these get little bonuses or negatives. So if you've got a vehicle that's only got a two-man turret, you've got problems with it's harder to communicate, it's harder to spot targets and so on. But in its essence, it's a very simple game. I like the individualized damage for vehicles, because that kind of, can I penetrate the armour? Yeah, so okay. Well, if I hit it, it blows up. It's like, no, these are solid shot. They're not banging into these things and they're magically exploding, You've just put a 37-metre hole through the driver, which he didn't appreciate. But the vehicle, you're going to spend a turn while crew change around, but you can probably drive that onward. There are campaign rules and things, sort of guidelines in there. This is a very useful set of rules, but what I find the charm of this is it walks you through the journey bit by bit. It took that initial thing and said, here are the real life problems. This is the exhaustion they faced. This is the heat in the tank. This is how tired these guys are. This is how they sometimes make bad decisions. This is how dodgy the number 19 wireless set can sometimes be. This is the problems of spotting targets. This is what it's like being in one. Here's the language that the commander has to use. Here's the language that the gunners and the drivers are going to hear. So this is how these things have to respond. Now here are the rules that will simulate this in the simplest but clearest possible thing. And his whole idea is to make this an experience. And that's what I love about these rules. They're not just some dice rolling and units are taken off the board. They are an experience. These vehicles have their weaknesses and they have their strengths. They have their gun armor combos and their movement. But they're not just vanishing off the board. There's damaged ones limping. There's ones that you're having to swap crews around. There's ones you're going to drag back and recover. This is too battered to keep on going. Or are you going to make those decisions and keep pushing on with damaged vehicles? I find it a way more charming experience than most modern war games. Everything, the measurements are done pretty simply. I think 1 inch is 50 yards at ground scale, so a 6x4 table gives you a lot of space to play. Lots of historical detail all in this. This is a wonderful, wonderful book. The rules in it are very playable, but they were always designed, and he says at every single point, these are designed to kick off your own ideas. So by all means, this is what I've been playing with. You may want to do something simpler, do something more complex, bring in a lot more, bring in infantry more than he's got, because infantry sort of had a pretty limited role, which actually is, you know, kind of nice. It's a very tank-only affair, tanks and anti-tank guns, and, you know, infantry's role was largely over running anti-tank guns. This is, as I said, a foundation work of miniatures wargaming. If you are a historian of our hobby, invaluable. Get hold of a copy of it any way that you can. As I said, that Wargames History Project, you can get it just as a download. You can find this on Amazon as a PDF. Costs you very little. It's wonderful. But, like I say with so many of the older games that I review on my channel here, it's not a dead game. I've been playing it. This is a living game. It's got great bones, and in this one's case, it's actually simple, easy to teach, and has just this wonderful feel to it. I highly recommend it as a World War II game. The Western Desert is really overlooked. Most World War II rules are written by Americans who just ignore the whole Western Desert. But it's got its wonderful sort of flavour, it's got its own tactical problems. And yeah, things like those compass steerings and the literal fog of war from the smoke plumes and all this sort of stuff. A very unique game. And I really like seeing the progress of the armour as it goes on, as each side is developing things and more advanced vehicles begin arriving, and things that seemed a great idea pre-war are finally found to be completely stupid ideas. And yeah, it's really interesting. So anyway, highly recommend this. Donald Featherstone was a light unto his people, remembered with much love. I will honour him forever. This was the first World War II miniatures game that I ever played, and I will love it forever. I highly recommend you take a look. Mr. Snoots is not here with me at the moment. Wackily, there is a rule that says no cuddly toys at the Taj Mahal. I bought him his own ticket. So, yes, he is actually, he's back in the tour bus under guard. So, all right, but he has been touring India with me. He sends many waves and hugs. Hopefully I'll see you people around a games table sometime soon. So, from the Taj Mahal, farewell.